Hi, welcome to Dragonblade Authors Unplugged. We've got bunches of releases this week, but I'm lucky because I get to talk to Ava Devlin and Christy Matheson, and I haven't had a chance to talk to either of you before, so I'm excited to have a chance to hear about your series. But first off, I want to talk about the other books that released this week. Ladies' Guide to Subterfuge Science is Isabella Kamal's book, and it's book one in Protocols of Gentility. I always have to think real careful when I say that one to make sure I get the words in the right order. And then the next book that released this week was Winter's Thief, and that's E.L. Johnson's book, and that's part of the Winter Murders series. So that's historical mystery. Death of a Nobleman is another historical mystery. That's Aviva Orr's, and that's part of the DeLacy and Squires mystery series. And then Gillian Eaton has a book in her Ladies of Seduction. It's book three, and this is The Countess Kisses a Rogue, because of course she does. So those are the books that released in the beginning of the week. But then after that comes Little Miss Nobody, which is book two in the Starling Legacy, and that's Ava's book. Book one was Fluently Speaking Baron. So I would love to hear both about this release and also a little bit about the series, Ava. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. So the series is the Starling Legacy, and the way I kind of pitched it to Catherine was Umbrella Academy in Regency Brighton. It's it's about the adult wards of a now missing baroness who collected children that she found remarkably talented. So each book follows one of the wards. The first book, Fluently Speaking Baron, follows Hattie, who is a polyglot and is neurodivergent, as she is forced into marriage with Willa's heir by the machinations of her last will and testament. Mm-hmm. The second book, Little Miss Nobody, is about Liberty Lennox, who is the actress of the group, and her brother's best friend, who is that guy we all know who has lots and lots of big ideas and no follow through. So he recruits her into
3 or 4 of those.
Yeah, he recruits her into a scheme to ingratiate himself with a shipping magnate and potentially marry their heiress daughter, but she has to pose as a made-up foreign princess that she has been doing their whole lives as kind of a pub con, but she has to make it extremely legitimate for this, and it just goes terribly wrong at every possible turn.
Oh, goodness. Oh, I love the setup for the series, though. That's Umbrella Academy is one of my favorites, and set it in the Regent's period. Like, how much fun was that? So.
Yeah. I will say the third book coming out in September, the main character, Reese, is very much based on Klaus from Umbrella Academy. So if you enjoyed Umbrella Academy, then you'll enjoy Reese.
Yeah. Awesome. How did you come up with the idea for the series?
It's one that's kind of been swimming around in my head for a long time. I just had to give it shape. I have lots of what I call like squishy ideas, things that I have to sit down and sort of hammer into something coherent. So when I had the opportunity to put together a whole series at once, this just felt like the right fit for that.
Yeah. Do you keep your ideas in a place where you can go back and visit them, or do they just float around in there until you grab them?
I used to. When I was still working a corporate job, I had just note cards everywhere. I'd get up in the middle of the night and like jot down things that I wouldn't understand in the morning. I just had like a giant stack of ideas. But because I'm producing so quickly now that I'm doing it full time, there's really very little room for that. So I had the Starling Legacy planned out for 6 books. It's looking like it might be 7 now. And I have the next 4 of my Ladies Revenge Club kind of sketched out in a Google document that I'll get to when I get to it.
Love a series that grows.
Yeah.
You get to spend time in. Awesome. Well, the next book that comes out this week is Brute Most Brazen, and that's Tanya Wild's book, and we'll catch up with her another time as well. That's book 2 in the Bastards of Brighton series. And then the one after that is there's the Lion and the Lioness, was obviously a Lion's Den book, and that's Christine Donovan. And then the other book that comes out this week is The Bonnet Brigade, which is Christy's book, and it's the brand new book in a brand new series, and it's The Bonnet Brigade, so I can remember it without having to look at the notes again. I love that. It's so much easier for me. So can you tell us both about the series and about the book?
Sure. So the impetus for this series, and Ava just used a cross. So the cross we're using is Bridgerton, the intrigue of Bridgerton with the Sisterhood of the Little Women.
Oh, fun.
And so this is one that a mediocre gentleman in the ton loses his whole fortune in a jewel mine. And he knows what's going to happen. Like, they have some warning. And this book is when his daughters and his niece Celia lives with him as well. She's an adult. Find out what is happening, and so there are layers of intrigue. There's figuring out what has happened with Mr. Thompson's fortune, which is what they all depend on. Like, they have
Mhm.
nothing
Yeah.
else. Figuring out what they're going to do. The women end up uniting in a different way and forming the Bonnet Brigade. It's what they call, where they all take care of each other, and that's one of the themes that continues throughout the series. My original idea was calling the fledgling series because they're all like kind of thrust out into the
Hmm.
world before they're ready. And so they do this in very different ways. That some of them, there's a spontaneous, there's one with a spontaneous marriage with a guy she already kind of liked, but they didn't have anything agreed on. Another one goes off and lives by herself. The youngest one lives with an older sibling. And in this book, in the Bonnet Brigade, we have Celia, who is the oldest, who's a cousin. So she is actually the daughter of an Irish baron.
Oh.
Her father has died, and she's come to live with her mother's sister in London.
Mhm.
So she is very aware that she has more privilege, a better title. She has her own dowry. She has a brother who is a baron, although he's pretty incompetent, and his disaster is
Man.
another layer of intrigue in here. So she is determined to fix everything for everyone. And she thinks if she can just
Oh.
marry that gentleman that her aunt has been telling her she can find at any moment, she just needs to discover him, marry him, and move all her cousins into his house. And that
She
is
has
all
oldest
she's
daughter
thinking.
syndrome.
It's what?
She has oldest daughter syndrome. She's trying to
She
fix
has
everything
oldest
for
daughter
everyone.
syndrome so bad. When she was 13, her mother died, and she ended up taking over the barony, and she ran it for 10 years. So she is used to running everything, managing everything. She actually really chafes in English society where she doesn't have anything to do. That's very difficult for her. But yes, she is determined to fix everything for everyone, if just like the right gentleman will appear out of the woodwork and marry her. And in the beginning, the only way she refers to this, she calls him a house. She's looking for a house with, the gentleman attached or not.
Yeah.
And gradually her siblings and friends convince her that it's not worth marrying anyone in the world just because they have a house. And needless to say, there's actual love involved as these different intrigues come
Mhm.
forward. But the impetus for this series is Celia decides she needs a house. They lose their fortune. She's going to fix everything. And this is very much both Celia and her love interest are the type of people who fix everything for everyone else. And that's why they're not married, and because they've never taken any time for
Mhm.
themselves. It takes a crisis for them both to realize that there's something emotionally important to them. And it takes this community of sisters and cousins and friends working together to make sure that Celia follows her heart instead of doing the thing that
Oh.
seems obvious because she
Mhm.
has a rich suitor who nobody likes at all.
She doesn't need to marry him for the house. She needs a good guy. Who is our hero?
She Who is our hero? Our hero is Peter. And in Celia's chapter, he is introduced in as Peter Hughes. And then in his own chapter, he is introduced as Peter Alcott. And so obviously there is a lot going on. At the end of the
Well,
book, we get a hint. He mentions in a conflict that he uses his real name for the first time in 15 years. So
oh, wow.
there is a lot of mystery who
Mhm.
Peter actually was. He was a strategist in the Napoleonic War, and we figure out pretty quickly that he is a spy. Um, but what he is doing now, or why he is getting these not ransom notes, what do you call them? Blackmail notes about
Mhm.
his sister.
Oh.
He's not sure. We're really not sure. And he
Oh.
is so used to playing his cards close to his chest that
Mm.
that even when he tries to tell either us or Celia these secrets, he's actually no longer able to do that. So there's
Oh, that sounds like fun. So we get like mystery, a flavor of mystery along with our romance. Does that go on through the rest of the series?
Yeah, I call it adventure more than mystery because
Mhm.
it doesn't follow those mystery beats. But
Mhm.
I do try to always have that adventure element. You know, we're not just like the ballrooms and the other places. And so the second book in the series actually follows the same couple because they're so messed up. We needed two books to finish
Oh,
them.
oh wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So
And then is book
the
three a
second
different? Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
then
Go
book
ahead.
3 is the oldest sister, and book 4 is the youngest sister. And I actually have a Lion's Den book scheduled that'll be the middle sister.
Oh,
Um,
fun. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I haven't had a chance to talk to either of you before, so I'm really excited to hear a little bit about. I mean, we talked a little bit about ideas, but maybe we could talk a little bit about your writing process. Are we plotters? Are we pansters? Are we plotsters?
Plantsters. I
I knew there was a word that I was grasping for.
I
I
at a conference somebody introduced panty liners, and I
Oh,
forget what the definition of that
I do my best to stay within the skeleton that I sketch out for myself,
Mhm.
but ultimately I can just build the room, and once I drop them into it, they're going to do what they're going to do. And generally that turns out better than anything that I could have planned in advance. It's a process of getting to know them as I write them along with the reader.
Do you get the characters first or the plot first?
Um, I for a series, I try to find a theme, a through line
Mhm.
first, and then characters, and then plots. So if you go back and look at like my original roadmap for the Starling Legacy, it veered pretty far off course for some of the couples because once I got to know them, uh, the original premise didn't fit as well. Also because my wonderful editor is such a stickler about historical accuracy. In my indie books, I tend to just avoid being specific about what the year is or how old anyone is because it's just a lot to keep up with. But she forced me to pick a year, and because I did that, I started digging into like what happened in 1817 and 1818, especially around Brighton. And 1818 was an election year. There was a prize ship glut from the end of the Napoleonic Wars. There was just a bunch of stuff that I was able to kind of dig out and play with that wove in really nicely with the characters that I created.
Yeah, awesome. What about you, Christy? Do you plot them out ahead of time or do you just go?
My critique partner called me a pantser ahead of time, and I think that's the most accurate thing. So by the time I sit down and write, I have a very clear vision of what I want to write, but I spend weeks or months very intuitively just like working through the story. I tell scenes in my head. I think, oh, I got bored at this point. I'm not going to include that. Like, I usually get a sense of like, here's the heart, like here's the best scene, what else can I add, like what if I bring one of these characters in, like that doesn't make sense that she's here. So I just like keep working it out in my head in a way that is very intuitive, but I need to do that before I sit down and write. So by the time I sit down and write, I have things pretty clear. Sometimes I have an outline, but it's more like jotting down the ideas that I have more than the idea of making one of those, point 1C, 2B, like the other reason I'll outline or make notes is just to make sure I have about the right amount of story for the length. Um, because it's really easy to end up with, you have way too many plot threads in the first half and it's gonna like take forever and like that's not
Yeah.
a novel. I also write and publish short stories and novellas and this old that, like being
Oh,
aware
interesting.
of how much story you have ahead of time is really
Mhm.
important. And I'm pretty good at coming in really pretty close to where where I planned it, which is important because I hate writing like 30,000 words that I've got to throw out. That is not a part of the process I'm okay with. So I do like to have it pretty clear, but I'm very intuitive in the way I approach the story.
I would imagine that writing short stories is something that gives you a sense of how to structure a story in a brief amount of time and make sure you get to the character's real feelings quickly. And
yes,
I think that would be a
yeah. I actually do a short story anthology that we're working on our 3rd volume, and so I've worked with a lot of other authors about short stories too.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 3,000 word limit, which is very tight.
Oh, that's
very snug.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
like a chapter.
It is. Yeah, it's, I mean, to me, that has to be like crystal clear planned out in my head before I start, because you want to have like drama and emotion and you need to go somewhere, but it's very short. But I think they're really fun when they come together. And I really like the novella length too. I think I like that. I have a series of novellas. I like them as a writer. I like them as a reader. I like something that like you can sit down and you don't have to remember all these secondary characters and a different plot. And like when I'm tired, like I love sitting down and just reading a short novella in an evening. So I write those too. And that again, like just takes clarity in thinking, and it's a very different plotting or like plotting is used as such a specific meaning, but a very different awareness process. And like I think of it as like putting these ingredients in a bowl, and it's like, okay, well, this is enough ingredients to take us through a novella. Like this is enough ingredients for a novel, but it's got to be there from the first couple chapters, all the way from the beginning.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. So do you have tropes that you think work better in different forms? Do either of you have tropes you particularly like to write?
For me, my favorite kind of hero is the fool/trickster, and I don't feel like he gets the spotlight enough. So all of my series have at least one of those. In terms of tropes, I tend to try to find ones I haven't attempted yet and plan ahead to try it. This series has my first age gap romance, and I was really nervous about doing that because it's so easy to, make it accidentally creepy. But I think we got it into a nice place. The betas have been very positive about that one. That will be book number 4. But yeah, that's one of those things that I like to do in the very beginning of sketching out the shape of the series. I like to have an overarching plot for the chunk. So in the Starling Legacy, their deceased patroness, is still somehow sending them mail throughout the course of the series.
So we're not going to know how that happens.
Yeah, that's the overarching full plot for the series itself. But when I broke it up into 6 books, I wanted to make sure that each book had its own flavor. So you choose the tropes ahead of time, you choose the character archetypes ahead of time, and then build the story from there.
Do you find yourself more attached to the heroines or the heroes?
In this particular series, I find myself more attached to the original wards. So they are mixed. There are four boys and 4 girls. And that's different for me because usually the heroine is where I am most interested in spending my time. But I have found with the guys' books that I just want to go back to their point of view because that's the one that I feel I can embody the best, I guess. Or I know them better than I know their love interest. Yeah.
That's amazing. Christy, what about you? Do you have a favorite trope to read or write?
I like to read and write tropes that I would like in my life. I know that some romance readers read for this opposite, I would never want somebody to treat me like that in real life, but I love reading about this wild thing. And I'm the opposite. I want something that makes me feel good, makes me feel good about, I never feel like I am the character, but if I were Celia, I would want to be treated like that. And so I lean towards those tropes. This whole series is a play on marriage of convenience. Again, they're very different ways of doing that. I think there's only one that is a straight up marriage of convenience. In the typical way, one of the book 3, as I said, is she goes actually to Istanbul to marry a man that she'd agreed with her father to write letters with, which we know in the Regency is like, oh, this is like pre-courting. And her father, when he learns about this fortune thing, he basically bullies them both into pretending that that actually they agreed to more than he did. And he's like, well, so he sends a letter and he's like, well, sir, you made these promises to my daughter and you're not being a gentleman and fulfilling them. And he's like, okay, I'll be a gentleman and marry her. So they agree to get married from opposite sides of the continent. He is in Istanbul. Mm-hmm. He sends her a ticket on a ship. And her father is like, okay, off you go.
Oh my
she
goodness.
Goes to Istanbul and marries a man she's known for 2 weeks a year ago. And so it's a different type of marriage of convenience. Mm-hmm. In this one, we have marriage of convenience of the two never planned on getting married until we have this scene with being ruined in we got the house, we got problems. She thinks he doesn't have a house. And we have a ruined in a dark garden. And so this rescue trope going on. But again, so even when it's a little bit different, they're all getting engaged, getting married for some reason other than going through any sort of decision-making process. And so I really like that because then you get to spend, and then the second book, obviously, since it's with the same couple, they're married for all of it. And so that also is kind of like a marriage in trouble trope, I think is what you call that. So, but they all have that flavor in different ways. And I love reading books where the marriage is like at the first quarter or the first half, and you get to spend your time with them rather than this will they or won't they, but you know they will, like the whole book. So did. I was like, they already did, and you're like, well, now what are you gonna do with it? Yeah. So I enjoy reading that, and when I envisioned this series, that was one of the reasons I envisioned this, like, you know, the fortune falling, and like, now what is everybody going to do? So at some point, you're like, I'll have books that are not always this trope, but this whole series is, and I really enjoy it.
There's something really lovely about like watching them decide who's going to be the one, because you know it's the feelings that they're going to catch feelings and they're going to become real, and somebody's going to have to step out of their comfort zone and be vulnerable and admit to that before things can move forward. And that's like the stakes. And I
really try to choose unusual, you know, not just the same. I try to write tropes in a really different way, and so each couple has different reasons why they're not fully committed, or they are fully committed, but there's a reason that they can't. And so I try to use some unusual ways and some different interpretations of that, which is what I like about tropes, is you have such this broad umbrella that you can go emotionally into it so many different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. It's like it's a playground, so you have to decide where you want to play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we talked a little bit, Ava, you talked a little bit about researching the year that she wrote in, and Christy, you just mentioned about setting the book, you know, she's going to Istanbul. Do you have ways that you research? And I think what I really want to know is, how do you stop yourself from going down the rabbit hole and then the rabbit hole next to it and then the one that's next to that? How do you
I don't stop myself. I'm up at 2:00 in the morning while my partner and my dog are asleep, reading about this, you know, like Martha Gunn, this woman who was famous for violently dunking women in and out of water to fix their allergies, who died in 1815. Yeah, that's a thing.
Oh my goodness.
Because my characters typically in a series, there's usually like one anchor character who is with the aristocracy, and everybody else is either demi-monde or working class, because I just find that more interesting. There are a lot of little rabbit holes to go down, and with these characters having unique talents and having traveled around for them, there's a lot of research that goes into that. I'm writing book 6 right now with the heroine is a chemist / perfumer who has a crazy sense of smell.
Wow.
So the other day I spent a lot of time learning that there are people in the world who can smell bugs. Like that ants have a smell, roaches have a smell. They know when their house is infested before you see anything because they can smell it. And these are the little things where you end up losing.
Did not know that was a thing.
Yeah, I'm really grateful I don't have that particular talent. The hero in this one is a naturalist, so I installed an app on my phone called iNaturalist, and as I walk my dog around the city, I'll snap pictures of trees and plants and weeds to identify what they are, and then come home and look up what they do, if they're used in chemistry or medicine or whatever. So you get a lot of ideas just from kind of engaging with the world as you're creating it.
I build the stories because they like doing that. They like, they like learning how things work and understanding why people do certain things, and the story.
Yeah. So my hero in book 3 is an illusionist, and I got to learn a lot of the popular magic tricks of the Regency and how they work. So I learned, about salamander wool, and I learned about how the counting chicken works.
What's a salamander wool?
Salamander wool is cloth made out of asbestos, and the way the trick works is that asbestos is fireproof. So they get it really, really dirty, and they do a bit about, how they can never get their laundry caught up or whatever, and then they throw it into a fire, and when they pull it out, it's pristine, white, and clean.
That's sneaky.
Yeah. They're probably inhaling really bad stuff, but everybody was at that time.
Really bad stuff inhaled at that time. So, Christy, what about you?
I actually learned how to. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I actually learned how to perform the cup and ball before writing that trick in the book, because it's the classic. It's been around since ancient Rome. Mm-hmm. So I really try to have fun.
That makes sense.
I think, I start in kind of the opposite place from Ava, who mentioned that she didn't want to ground it in a year. I start very specific. I came to this as a historian, and so I have a lot of that big picture in my head. And so to me, this is the fun between having that big picture history to be what does it matter? Like Ava, I like writing multiple classes, multiple types of people in different places. What does it matter to this kind of person? What does it matter to this kind of person in this kind of place? And then, you get to what does it matter to Peter and Celia, and now you have a story. And so I like taking it from there. Most of the things I write about, I have a lot of big picture knowledge going in. I wrote this book about Istanbul because we had traveled to Istanbul, and so I homeschool my kids, and so we spent a while studying it. We learned all this stuff. We went all over Turkey, and we're seeing the Silk Road, and I was, so it started with, wow, this is really amazing. How can I pull this into my world and my characters? And it was actually incredibly, I'd already picked 1820, so it had to happen in 1820, which was incredibly difficult time to write, because essentially the Ottoman Empire as it existed went from the 1400s to the mid 1820s. And so this is everything was about to change, hugely, and it was a huge pivot point. The army that had, so they, I won't get into that. It's fascinating, but I won't get into it. But it was about to change hugely. And so I couldn't, you can have things that happened 10 years ago, but you can't have anything that's going to happen 3 years in the future. So looking up and finding these details, and I'm sure there's a lot that is wrong, because it is such an incredibly detailed thing, but probably most people in the whole entire world, including Ottoman historians, won't even know what was wrong, because we don't know. There's also, I love finding these places where we don't know the history. I think that's a really important role for historical fiction writers. So with something like that, because they believed in the Muslim tradition and the Ottoman tradition, which are overlapping but not the same, didn't write things down in the same way. And so, for instance, the information that we have written down that was Europeans going there and writing things down, they did not know at the time that they were only allowed to see the first layer of society. Nobody told them. They weren't even, trying to misrepresent it. But they weren't.
That's that they didn't realize.
There was a lot more that we didn't realize that the Ottomans weren't writing down because of their tradition of writing down. And so now, we're looking at us well, we've got this information from 1500 and this information from 1920. And where do we guess we were in 1820? And that was fascinating. That book, even with doing a ton of research ahead of time, was slow to write because I kept having to look things up. And sometimes there were very specific answers. Sometimes there were no answers. Sometimes there were like 5 different things, that
The one that
experts would
works best
say.
for the story. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's getting off topic with a different book in the
No,
series.
no.
But that's um, I think generally by the time I go to write, I'm pretty good at like doing enough research to answer the question and then moving on. Most of the time, I have enough umbrella research that I can fit it in. So, for instance, at one point, I wanted the main character to hear a news article. So there's a lot of something I also find interesting about this Regency period is there were a lot of social mores that were undefined. So, for instance, being gay, men who were gay was both very accepted. Like we know there were brothels for gay men in London that wealthy people went to. Everybody knew them. But we also know that people were being executed for being gay. That was still on the books. And so I wanted her to like overhear a newspaper story and have this affect her being like, wait a minute, this isn't the world that I knew about. So, I went on and I looked up and I found newspaper stories and I scrolled through a bunch of them until I found one that was, again, like close to the right time period, the right place, the right emotional impact. I might have fudged a few months, but it was pretty close. But for me, because I've got that context, I know generally about what the role of gay people in the Regency was. I know generally these things. When I want to find that newspaper article, I usually can find it, and usually can move on.
Too. So.
I know, I know what I'm looking for, and I know if there's something that's just totally a detail that is going to stop me, like I will put those aside. And then there are some details that it's like, this could affect absolutely everything. Like, could Muslim women go outside their house in Istanbul? Like, that's going to change my whole book if they can or can't.
You would need to know that.
That was one that there was no good answer. That there were conflicting answers. So we kind of played with that, but I did make a character Christian just so it would take it off the table.
You do have to. Ava, who's your buddy? Your buddy a couple minutes ago. You have to show us your buddy.
This is Hera. Yeah, sorry, she's very clingy. This is Hera. She's my writing assistant.
So you have a writing dog, not a writing cat. Oh, awesome. Well, ladies, it was great talking to you today. I love hearing about how you craft your stories. I loved learning more about your process, and I'm excited about the books that are coming out. I'll make sure I put the links to the books in the comment. I'll put the links to all this week's books in the comment. And I'm also going to include the Dragonblade Lion's Den Kickstarter, which is on Monday. So excited about it. Wait till you see this book. They edges, they did an astounding job. So, but I'll make sure I put the links to everything in the comments so you can grab them. And ladies, thanks again for taking the time to talk to us. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for talking with us.